My wife's bad friends told her to leave for a week to teach me a lesson, so I called the divorce lawyer. Hi everyone, thanks for joining me today. I've got a story to share that changed everything I thought I knew about marriage. My name is Justin, and when my wife's toxic friends convinced her to abandon our home for a week just to teach me a lesson, I did the one thing she never saw coming. Let me take you back to where it all began. Sophia and I had what everyone called a fairy tale romance. We met during our senior year at UCLA, but fate had other plans. I got a job offer in Denver right after graduation, while she stayed in California to finish her master's degree. For 3 long years we made love work across state lines. Those were the days of endless FaceTime calls that stretched past midnight, surprise visits that cost me half my paycheck, and text messages that kept us connected through every mundane moment. Distance, they say, makes the heart grow fonder, and boy were they right. Every reunion felt like a honeymoon. Every goodbye was torture that only made us more determined to make it work. When Sophia finally graduated with her MBA in marketing, I didn't hesitate. I flew to Los Angeles, got down on one knee at Malibu Beach during sunset, and asked her to be my wife. She said yes through tears of joy, and 6 months later, we had our dream wedding at a vineyard in Napa Valley. The first year of marriage was everything I'd imagined. Sophia moved to Denver, and we found a beautiful 2-story house in the suburbs of Lakewood. Those early months were filled with lazy Sunday mornings at Snooze Eatery, sharing their famous pineapple upside-down pancakes, hiking trails in the Rockies, and building our life together piece by piece. I worked as a software engineer for a tech startup downtown, while Sophia landed a marketing coordinator position at First National Bank. We were both ambitious, driven, and deeply in love. Our evening routine became sacred, cooking dinner together, sharing stories from our workdays, and planning our future over glasses of wine. But here's what no one tells you about marriage. Love doesn't automatically prepare you for the reality of sharing everything. Suddenly, I couldn't leave dishes in the sink overnight or watch ESPN until 2 a.m. without considering someone else. Sophia had her own adjustments too, sharing closet space, compromising on dinner choices, and learning to live with my admittedly annoying habit of leaving towels on the bathroom floor. Still, we navigated these changes together with patience and humor. We both agreed that rushing into parenthood wasn't necessary. Let's build our careers first, we'd tell each other over dinner at our favorite Italian place, Romano's. Save money, travel, enjoy being newlyweds. For 2 years this plan worked perfectly. Sophia excelled at the bank, earning promotion after promotion until she became the youngest branch marketing manager in company history. I celebrated every milestone with her, genuinely proud of the woman I'd married. But success, as I'd soon learn, can sometimes attract the wrong kind of attention. The trouble started innocently enough. Sophia, being naturally social and wanting to build connections in our new city, began making friends at work. At first I was thrilled. I wanted her to have her own circle, her own support system beyond just me. The first red flag came when she started mentioning 2 coworkers constantly, Brittany and Heather. Brittany was recently divorced, apparently for the 2nd time, and seemed to wear this like a badge of honor. Heather was single but involved in what Sophia described as complicated situations, with unavailable men. I didn't think much of it initially. Everyone needs friends, right? But then Sophia started coming home with stories that made my stomach turn. Brittany would brag about how freeing divorce was, how she'd finally escaped the prison of marriage. Heather would share details about her affair with her married boss, laughing about how his wife suspected but couldn't prove anything. The first time I met them was at our annual company barbecue. Sophia insisted I invite them, saying they were like sisters to her now. The moment I shook Brittany's hand, I knew something was off. She looked me up and down with this smirk like she was sizing up prey. During dinner, while we were grilling burgers and hot dogs in our backyard, I overheard Brittany telling Sophia, "Honey, you're so young and beautiful. Why tie yourself down when you could be living your best life?" Heather chimed in, "Marriage is just a piece of paper. Real love doesn't need legal contracts." I felt my jaw clench, but I kept quiet. These were Sophia's friends and I didn't want to cause drama. But that night, after they left, I gently brought up my concerns. "Soph, don't you think it's strange that both your new friends seem so anti-marriage? When you're, married." She laughed it off, accusing me of being jealous that she had her own social life. "They're just venting, Justin. Everyone complains about relationships sometimes." But it wasn't just complaining. Over the following months, I watched these women systematically poison my wife's mind. They'd take her out for girls' nights that stretched until 3 a.m., filling her head with toxic ideas about independence and how marriage was holding her back. Sophia started changing. The woman who used to greet me with kisses when I came home from work began offering cold nods. Our conversations about starting a family, which used to be filled with excitement and planning, turned into arguments. "Why are you so obsessed with having kids?" she'd snap. "Maybe I don't want to ruin my body and my career for some fantasy you have about being a father." These weren't Sophia's words. I knew my wife and this wasn't her. But every time I tried to point out how much she'd changed since meeting Brittany and Heather, she'd accuse me of being controlling and manipulative. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in March. I decided to surprise Sophia by coming home early with takeout from her favorite Thai restaurant, Bangkok Garden. But when I walked through our front door, I found her in the living room with her toxic friends, and I heard something that made my blood run cold. I stood frozen in our entryway, holding bags of pad thai and spring rolls, as Brittany's voice carried clearly from the living room. "Trust me, honey, this is exactly what I did with my second husband. Men don't appreciate what they have until it's gone. You pack a bag, disappear for a week, and watch him panic. He'll stop pressuring you about babies and start treating you like the queen you are." Heather laughed, that bitter sound I'd grown to hate. "It's called making them sweat. My married guy does whatever I want now because he knows I could disappear anytime. Power dynamics, Sophia. That's what marriage really is." I heard my wife's voice, smaller than usual, uncertain. "But what if Justin doesn't react the way you think he will? What if he just lets me go?" "Impossible," Brittany declared with the confidence of someone who'd clearly never met a man with self-respect. "He's wrapped around your finger. 1 week of you being gone and he'll be begging you to come back. No more baby talk, no more pressure, just pure appreciation for what he almost lost." The Thai food suddenly felt heavy in my hands. I quietly set the bags on the kitchen counter and retreated to our bedroom, my mind racing. These women weren't just giving bad advice, they were actively sabotaging my marriage, turning my wife into a weapon against our relationship. For the next hour, I listened to them coaching Sophia on manipulation tactics. How to make me feel guilty for wanting children. How to use emotional withdrawal as punishment. How to prioritize her friends' opinions over her husband's feelings. When they finally left around 9 p.m., I gave Sophia 30 minutes to decompress before approaching the conversation I'd been dreading. "Hey babe," I said, settling onto our couch beside her. "I got home earlier and heard some of your conversation with Brittany and Heather. I'm really concerned about the kind of advice they're giving you." The transformation was instant. Sophia's face hardened, her eyes flashing with anger I'd never seen directed at me before. "You were spying on me? Are you serious right now, Justin?" "I wasn't spying. I came home to surprise you with dinner and couldn't help but overhear. Soph, these women are telling you to manipulate me to leave our home just to prove some twisted point. Don't you see how toxic that is?" But she was already standing, pacing our living room like a caged animal. "You don't get to judge my friendships. Brittany and Heather are the only people who actually listen to me, who support my independence. Unlike you, always pushing your timeline on me, always making me feel guilty for not wanting to be barefoot and pregnant." The words hit like physical blows. Barefoot and pregnant? Sophia, when have I ever said anything like that? I've supported your career every step of the way. I just thought we both wanted a family someday. Well, maybe I changed my mind. Maybe I realized there's more to life than becoming some suburban housewife just because it's what you expect. Again, these weren't her words. I could practically hear Brittany's voice coming out of my wife's mouth. But pointing that out would only make things worse. That night, we went to bed angry, sleeping on opposite sides of our king-sized mattress like strangers. It was the first time in our entire relationship that we'd gone to sleep without resolving a fight. I lay there in the darkness, listening to Sophia's breathing, wondering when exactly I'd lost my wife to the poison her so-called friends had been feeding her. Little did I know, I was about to find out just how deep that poison had spread. 3 weeks later, on a rainy Thursday morning in April, I woke up to the sound of zippers and rustling fabric. Still groggy from sleep, I padded to our bedroom doorway and found Sophia methodically packing a suitcase, folding her clothes with the same precision she used for business trips. "Going somewhere?" I asked, though my stomach already knew the answer. She didn't look up from her packing. "I'm going to stay with Brittany for a while. We need space, Justin. This marriage, it's not working the way it should." The casualness in her voice was devastating. She spoke like she was discussing weekend plans, not abandoning our 7-year relationship. Space for what, exactly? What happened to talking through our problems together? Finally, she met my eyes, and what I saw there broke my heart. This wasn't my Sophia anymore. This was a stranger wearing my wife's face, parroting her toxic friend's philosophy. Some problems can't be talked through. Sometimes people need to step back and evaluate whether they're truly happy or just going through the motions. I sat on our bed watching her pack essentials like she'd done this before. How long is a while? A week. Maybe more. I don't know, Justin. I just know I can't breathe in this house anymore. Can't breathe. Another Britneyism. I'd heard her use that exact phrase about her second marriage. Soft, please. Let's try counseling. Let's work on this together. Running away isn't going to solve anything. She zipped up her suitcase with finality. I'm not running away. I'm taking time to think about what I really want from my life. If you can't understand that, maybe that proves we're not as compatible as we thought. I tried reasoning with her for another 20 minutes, offering compromises, suggesting we both take time off work to focus on our relationship, even proposing we take a vacation together to reconnect. But her mind was made up. Brittany and Heather had convinced her that leaving was the answer, and nothing I said could compete with their toxic influence. She wheeled her suitcase to the front door, pausing only to grab her car keys from the hook. I'll call you in a few days, she said without looking back. And then she was gone. I stood in our empty house, surrounded by the life we'd built together, feeling like I'd just been sucker punched. The coffee maker was still brewing our morning pot. Her favorite mug sat in the sink from the night before. Everything looked normal except for the gaping hole where my wife should have been. For the first hour, I kept expecting her to come back. Maybe she'd realize how ridiculous this was, how un-Sophia-like her behavior had become. Maybe she'd remember that we were supposed to be a team. But as morning turned to afternoon, reality set in. My wife had chosen her toxic friends over our marriage. She'd chosen manipulation over communication, abandonment over commitment. I called in sick to work, something I rarely did, and spent the day walking through our house like a ghost. Every room held memories of our life together, the kitchen where we'd cooked countless meals, the living room where we'd watched movies and planned our future, the bedroom where we'd whispered dreams to each other in the dark. By evening, sitting alone at our dining room table with a microwave dinner, I came to a painful realization. This wasn't about space or thinking time. This was a test, exactly like Brittany had coached her. Sophia expected me to panic, to beg her to come home, to agree to anything just to get my wife back. But here's what Brittany and Heather didn't understand about me. I don't respond well to manipulation. And I sure as hell don't reward people for abandoning our marriage when things get tough. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. On Friday morning, exactly 24 hours after Sophia walked out, I did something I never thought I'd do in my entire life. I opened my laptop and started researching divorce attorneys in Denver. The decision wasn't made in anger, though I was furious. It wasn't made out of spite, though I felt betrayed. It was made from a place of clarity that only comes when someone shows you exactly who they are. Sophia had chosen to let her friends orchestrate our marriage's destruction. She'd chosen to abandon our home instead of fighting for our relationship. She'd chosen manipulation over honest communication. Most importantly, she'd chosen to test my love instead of trusting it. I found a highly rated family law attorney named Robert Harrison, whose office was downtown near my work. His reviews mentioned his straightforward approach and his ability to handle complex emotional situations with professionalism. I called and scheduled an appointment for Monday morning. The weekend was the longest of my life. I cleaned our house obsessively, meal prepped for the week, and binge-watched Netflix shows Sophia hated. I was determined not to sit around moping, waiting for her to decide my fate. If she wanted space, I'd give her all the space she needed, permanently. Sunday evening, I drove to our favorite hiking spot in Golden, Colorado, the trail where we'd had our first real conversation about marriage during our long-distance days. Standing at the overlook where we'd once planned our future, I finally allowed myself to grieve what we'd lost. But I wasn't just grieving Sophia. I was grieving the woman I thought she was, the partner who would fight for us instead of running away, the teammate who would choose our marriage over toxic friendships, the person who valued our bond too much to use it as a bargaining chip. Monday morning, I sat across from Robert Harrison in his downtown office, surrounded by law books and case files. He was a man in his 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Tell me what's happening in your marriage, Justin," he said, pulling out a legal pad. I gave him the full story, the toxic friends, the gradual changes in Sophia's behavior, her abandonment of our home, and the manipulation tactics I'd overheard. He listened without judgment, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "How long has she been gone?" he asked. 4 days. "And she's given you no timeline for her return?" "She said a week, maybe more." "But Robert, this isn't about her coming back. This is about the fact that she left in the first place. The woman I married would never abandon our marriage to prove a point. He leaned back in his chair, studying me carefully. Justin, I've been doing this for 23 years. I've seen marriages recover from much worse than this. Are you certain divorce is what you want? I want the woman I married back. But that woman doesn't exist anymore. Brittany and Heather have turned my wife into someone I don't recognize, someone who thinks marriage is a game to be won rather than a partnership to be protected. Robert nodded slowly. All right. Let me walk you through the process. For the next hour, we discussed property division, timelines, and the emotional reality of divorce. Colorado was a no-fault divorce state, which meant we wouldn't need to prove wrongdoing, just that our marriage was irretrievably broken. I'll need a $5,000 retainer to get started, Robert explained. And Justin? Once we file these papers, there's no going back. Even if your wife wants to reconcile, this will forever change the dynamic of your relationship. I pulled out my checkbook without hesitation. File. The papers. That afternoon I felt strangely peaceful. For the first time in months, I wasn't walking on eggshells, wondering what mood Sophia would be in or what toxic advice her friends had filled her head with. I was taking control of my own life. Wednesday morning, 5 days after Sophia had walked out, Robert called me at work. The papers have been served, he said simply. Within 2 hours, my phone exploded with messages from Sophia. Are you insane? This is your idea of fighting for our marriage. You're just trying to scare me into coming home. I can't believe you'd throw away 7 years over one fight. I stared at the messages for a long time before typing my response. This isn't a fight, Sophia. This is you choosing your friends over your husband. I hope it was worth it. That evening, I came home from work to find her car in our driveway. The final confrontation was about to begin. I parked behind Sophia's silver Honda Accord in our driveway, taking a moment to steady myself before going inside. Through the living room window, I could see her silhouette pacing back and forth, her phone pressed to her ear. Probably calling Brittany and Heather for emergency coaching on how to handle this unexpected turn of events. The front door was unlocked, she still had her key after all. I stepped inside to find her ending her call abruptly, whirling around to face me with wild eyes. Justin, thank God you're home. We need to talk about these ridiculous divorce papers. She looked different than when she'd left 6 days ago. Her usually perfect makeup was smeared, her hair was disheveled, and there was a frantic energy radiating from her that I'd never seen before. This wasn't the confident woman who'd calmly packed her suitcase and walked out. This was someone who'd just realized that actions have consequences. There's nothing to talk about, I said, setting my work bag down and loosening my tie. You made your choice when you walked out that door. I didn't choose anything. I just needed some space to think. That's normal in relationships, Justin. Couples take breaks all the time. Couples communicate when they're struggling. Couples go to therapy. Couples don't abandon their homes because their toxic friends told them it would be a good manipulation tactic. Her face flushed red. It wasn't manipulation. Brittany and Heather were just trying to help me figure out what I wanted. And what did you figure out, Sophia? That marriage is a prison? That I'm trying to trap you with a baby? That running away is easier than having an adult conversation? She moved closer, reaching for my hand, but I stepped back. The hurt that flashed across her face almost broke my resolve. Please, Justin. I know I handled this wrong, but we can fix it. We can go to counseling, we can work on our communication, we could have done all of that 6 days ago. Before you chose to humiliate me by packing a bag and walking out. Before you chose to let Brittany and Heather design our marriage therapy. They're not designing anything. They're my friends. Friends don't encourage you to abandon your marriage, Sophia. Friends don't coach you on manipulation tactics. Friends don't celebrate when your relationship is struggling. She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. I know they're not perfect, but they've been through divorces. They understand what I'm going through in ways you can't. What you're going through? I felt my composure finally cracking. What exactly are you going through, Sophia? A loving husband who wants to build a family with you? A stable home and successful career? A marriage that most people would kill for? You don't understand the pressure I feel. Everyone expecting me to have babies, to be the perfect wife, to give up my independence. I have never asked you to give up anything. I've supported every promotion, every late night at work, every dream you've ever had. The only thing I've ever wanted is for us to grow our family together when you were ready. But apparently, wanting a future with my wife makes me the villain. She collapsed onto our couch, sobbing into her hands. This isn't how I wanted things to go. Brittany said you'd realize how much you missed me and we'd work things out. She said men always come crawling back. There it was. The truth finally came out. So this was a test, I said quietly. You abandoned our marriage to see if I'd come crawling back. You put our entire relationship at risk because Brittany convinced you it was a good idea. It wasn't supposed to end like this. How was it supposed to end, Sophia? With me begging you to come home? Agreeing to forget about having children? Thanking you for teaching me a lesson about appreciating you? She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Yes, I don't know. I just wanted you to understand how I felt. I understood how you felt when you told me. What I didn't understand was that you'd rather play games than trust me enough to work through our problems together. We can still work through them. Please, Justin. Don't let Brittany and Heather ruin what we have. I sat down across from her, maintaining distance between us. They didn't ruin what we had, Sophia. You did. The moment you chose their advice over our marriage, you ended this relationship. I choose you. I'm here now, aren't I? I'm choosing you. You're here because you got served divorce papers and panicked. If I had reacted the way Brittany predicted, if I had begged and pleaded and promised to change, would you be here? Or would you still be at her apartment, celebrating your successful manipulation? She couldn't answer because we both knew the truth. I want to fix this, she whispered. There's nothing left to fix, Sophia. You showed me exactly where I rank in your priorities. Somewhere below Brittany, somewhere below Heather, somewhere below proving a point. That's not true. Then why didn't you fight for us? Why didn't you suggest counseling before you left? Why didn't you trust me enough to be honest about your fears instead of running away? The silence stretched between us, filled only by her quiet crying and the tick of our living room clock. Finally she spoke. What do I have to do to make this right? But I was already shaking my head. It's too late, Sophia. Some things can't be undone. 6 months later, I signed the final divorce decree in Robert Harrison's office. The marriage that had once been the center of my universe was officially over, reduced to legal documents and property division. Sophia had tried everything to change my mind during those months. She'd sent flowers to my office, written long letters apologizing for her mistakes, even shown up at my gym hoping to accidentally run into me. She'd cut off contact with Brittany and Heather, claiming she finally saw how toxic they were. She'd started individual therapy and begged me to join her for couples counseling. But the damage was done. Every gesture felt desperate rather than genuine, every apology felt like another manipulation tactic. How could I trust someone who'd been so easily influenced to destroy our marriage? How could I build a future with someone who'd chosen to test my love instead of trusting it? The property division was straightforward. We sold the house in Lakewood and split the proceeds. I kept my 401k and car, she kept hers. We divided our furniture and belongings like we were dissolving a business partnership rather than ending a love story. The hardest part wasn't the legal process or the financial logistics. It was learning to live with the person I'd become, someone who'd chosen self-respect over reconciliation, someone who'd walked away from love when it became conditional. Some nights, lying alone in my new apartment in downtown Denver, I wondered if I'd made the right choice. Sophia's tears had been real. Her regret seemed genuine. Maybe we could have worked through it with enough therapy and time. But then I'd remember the woman who'd calmly packed her suitcase while explaining how marriage wasn't working for her. I'd remember the months of toxic influence from friends who'd celebrated every crack in our foundation. I'd remember the calculated manipulation disguised as needing space. That woman wasn't my wife anymore. My wife would have fought for us. My wife would have chosen our marriage over her friends' approval. My wife would have trusted me with her fears instead of weaponizing them against our relationship. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Heather at a Starbucks near my office. She approached me while I was waiting for my order, her face a mixture of curiosity and something that looked like guilt. Justin, she said carefully. How are you doing? I'm doing well, Heather. How's Brittany? Still collecting ex-husbands? She flinched at my bluntness. Look, I know you probably blame us for what happened with Sophia, but I don't blame you for anything, I interrupted. Sophia made her own choices. You just gave her permission to make them. She really loved you, you know. She's been devastated since the divorce. I looked at this woman who'd helped destroy my marriage while claiming to be my wife's friend. If she'd really loved me, she would have chosen me over your advice. She would have fought for our marriage instead of testing it. People make mistakes, Justin. Sometimes they deserve second chances. Everyone deserves second chances, Heather. But some mistakes reveal character flaws that can't be fixed with apologies. I grabbed my coffee and headed for the door, then paused and looked back. Do me a favor, I said. Next time one of your friends is struggling in their marriage, suggest therapy. Suggest communication. Suggest anything except abandonment. A year later, I'm rebuilding my life on my own terms. I moved to a smaller apartment that's actually closer to work. I started rock climbing, joined a hiking group, and reconnected with friends I'd neglected during the final years of my marriage. I even started dating again, though I'm taking things slowly. I heard through mutual friends that Sophia moved back to California, closer to her family. Apparently, she's doing well in her career and has started therapy to work through what she calls the worst mistake of her life. I don't wish her ill. Part of me will always love the woman I married, the woman who existed before toxic influences convinced her that marriage was a competition to be won rather than a partnership to be nurtured. But I've learned something valuable from this experience. Self-respect isn't selfish. Setting boundaries isn't cruel. And sometimes, loving someone means refusing to enable their worst instincts. If you're listening to this and you're in a similar situation, whether you're dealing with a partner who's being influenced by toxic friends, or you're being pressured to test your relationship instead of nurturing it, let me leave you with this thought. A healthy relationship doesn't require tests, games, or manipulation tactics. It requires honesty, commitment, and the courage to choose each other even when it's difficult. If someone is willing to abandon you to prove a point, believe them. If someone prioritizes outside opinions over your partnership, protect yourself. You deserve a love that doesn't come with conditions. You deserve a partner who fights for your relationship instead of against it. And you deserve friends who celebrate your happiness rather than sabotage it. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to participate in the destruction of your own peace. Thanks for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone else avoid the heartbreak I went through, or gives them the courage to choose themselves when love becomes conditional.